Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. Now last week I said that this would be my 200th show. It's said that on my calendar for most of the year. But before I started recording I just went through my notes to update from the last few weeks and I may have jumped the gun. This could be my 199th show. Or it could be my 200th. I'm going to have to go back through all my records and count them all up again just to make sure. So next week I'm going to be celebrating my 200th or my 201st show. Or maybe 198, I could be that well out. But it's just as well you're not relying on me always for the information. And just as well I have guests on to give you the right stuff. And I have two guests on this week. In a moment we'll be hearing from Adam Mortimer from the UK European Consumer Centre. That'll be followed up by a guy called Daize, who's from the Disability Resource Centre in Luton. And then we'll be going back to Adam for another European regulation which you may not have heard of. Now the UK ECC, UK European Consumer Centre, contacted me last week because the 3rd of December was International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And the UK ECC was using the opportunity to remind everybody about the rights of people with disabilities when it comes to travelling by plane. It's a very catchy number, as all EU regulations are. It's EU 1107/2006. It's there to protect people with disabilities when it comes to travelling and make sure that certain things are put in place to make the journey as easy as possible. So the first thing I put to Adam was, well, what kind of problems do disabled passengers have when they're trying to fly?
Generally, you've got sort of the assistance that they receive at the airport not being received or not getting it in its entirety, or like being refused their medical equipment that they need on the plane, that kind of thing.
There are rules for delayed and cancelled flights. Is there an EU regulation to help disabled air passengers?
Yeah, there is. So it's EC Regulation 1107/2006, or if that's a bit of a mouthful, it's just the rights of disabled persons and persons with reduced mobility.
Now, what do airlines have to do to comply with this?
They have to do things like giving assistance at the airport, and although that's provided by the airport, you have to make sure that that's something you do when you're booking, or at least 40 hours before. That assistance sort of varies from picking you up at a designated point, getting you through the check-in procedure, the security, and then to the gate at the end. So there's quite a few areas which it does cover there.
Does that mean that passengers, if they need assistant dogs, they can travel with them without any problems?
Yeah, so those assistant dogs, they're a necessity. They're possibly considered that medical equipment. So as long as the dog itself has all the necessary papers, then they're free to travel with the passenger.
Does this regulation only cover passengers when they're flying within the EU or out of the EU?
Yeah, so if they're departing from, transiting through, or arriving in an EU airport, then they're covered by these regulations.
You hear stories about airlines refusing to allow passengers on board because the airline said they've reached their quota of disabled passengers. When the press hits this, the airlines always say they're acting on passenger safety, but can they actually do this?
The simple answer is yes. Quota is probably the wrong word to use, but the airlines can refuse those based on, the airline that you're travelling with, the aircraft size, the airline staff that they have on, and the passengers' needs. And the safety of all passengers is paramount. So it will really depend on the situation. But, as I said before, it's got to be notified at least 48 hours before. Mm-hmm. So, you don't necessarily see it that often, but there is obviously a chance where a passenger could be denied boarding, if the relevant information hasn't been given early enough, and then it would just be a straightforward denied boarding claim.
What are the penalties for airports and airlines if they fail to comply with the regulation?
It's set by each individual member state in the EU, and it's dealt with by the designated bodies, so it can vary from place to place.
And how can we find out more about this particular regulation?
Yeah, so obviously you can Google EC Regulation 1107/2006. The EU Commission website has the complete text from the regulation there. Can be a bit tough to read. We have got key points on the ECC website, but it's one of those things where you can't instantly attribute it to one part, and it may require looking into a bit more to determine on each individual circumstance.
You're listening to The Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. As always, any websites mentioned in the show will be posted at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Just look for the post that says the 8th of December Travel Show. With the press release that the UK ECC sent me, they did have a few case studies about what's happened with people with disabilities when they're trying to travel. In 2016, their website received information requests and complaints from an elderly Dutch woman who was supposed to fly from Amsterdam to Sofia. She got assistance when arriving at the airport because she was not able to walk long distances. However, an employee took her to the wrong gate, and as a result, she missed her flight. A British air passenger suffering from Crohn's disease wasn't allowed to board a flight as the airline claimed that she appeared drunk. And an Austrian even consumer booked a flight from Vienna to Paris. He needs a dialysis machine, which is vital for him, but too big to carry his hand luggage. The airline denied offering this transportation as medical equipment free of extra charges. So what should be provided? Well, the regulation says that there should be assistance and arrangements necessary to enable disabled persons and persons with reduced mobility to communicate their arrival at an airport and their request for assistance at the designated points inside and outside terminal buildings, move from a designated point to the check-in counter, check in and register baggage, proceed from the check-in counter to the aircraft with completion of immigration, customs and security procedures, board the aircraft with the provision of lifts, wheelchairs and other assistance needed as appropriate, proceed from the aircraft door to their seats, store and retrieve baggage on the aircraft, proceed from their seats to the aircraft door, disembark from the aircraft with the provision of lifts, wheelchairs and other assistance needed as appropriate, proceed from the aircraft to the baggage hall and retrieve baggage with the completion of immigration and customs procedures, proceed from the baggage hall to a designated point, reach connecting flights when in transit with the assistance of the air and land sides and between terminals as needed, and move to the toilet facilities if required. That sort of thing should be put in place. As you know, when you listen to my show regularly, you know that my local airport is London Luton Airport, and I'm there a lot, and I do see people with us being assisted on their process through the airport. One or two people do complain that the drop-off point is downhill from the terminal building and it can be difficult to get up the slope with a wheelchair and baggage. I contacted the company who runs the contract for that, but they haven't decided to return my calls yet, which is a shame because most people I know who use them are very happy with the company, so it would have been good to give them the positive feedback. But when you look at the London Luton Airport website, they say that they are in partnership with the Disability Resource Centre in Luton to ensure that the airport gives the best possible service to people with disabilities, to make sure their process through the airport is as smooth as possible. So my next guest is Simon Daize. He represents the Disability Resource Centre, and I wanted to know more about the partnership and whether he felt that anything more could be done to make life easier for persons with disabilities or reduce mobility.
Well, the Disability Resource Centre is a charity and it covers the whole of Bedfordshire, and our sister organisation is the Northamptonshire Centre for Independent Living. And our aims are basically to try and get people with physical or mental health disabilities to live independently and offer a great deal of support in many different ways, whether it's financial welfare benefits checks or hire of disability aids.
Luton Airport's my local airport, and on their website they said they were in partnership with you when it came to reviewing how the airport assisted people who needed specific requirements when flying. Did the airport approach you, or did you approach the airport?
I believe our relationship with the airport is long-standing over a number of years now. I know that our predecessor, our previous chief executive, Mick Dillon, was also a member of the passenger services subcommittee at London Luton Airport, and I believe they approached us, but I'm not sure of the history behind it. But we've been a member of the subcommittee for a number of years now.
Being a member of the subcommittee, have you seen any changes made which you requested yourself, or was it just given the tick to what the airport had already done?
No, I think the airport is very positive in their approach to dealing with people with disabilities and mobility issues, and they appear to welcome and embrace change, and also welcome the opportunity to discuss changes with various individuals who have maybe a better understanding of disability issues and mobility issues, such as myself and other colleagues who sit around the table on the subcommittee. I've offered my services to act as a mystery shopper, as it were, or a mystery traveller at the airport, and I know that they've taken other people up on that opportunity as well, and have done that on a number of times around the airport. That's
good to hear. As is my local airport, people do say about the same thing, about that it's a slope going up from the drop-off area getting to the air terminal building. It can be a bit difficult with a wheelchair, but they're putting in a covered walkway, which I'm assuming is going to be nice and level, so that's going to make a big difference to people. It's good to hear that you're happy with what the airport are doing, but do you feel that they're unusual when it comes to UK airports? Do you feel that other airports are not doing as good a job?
I think there are a number of key issues with regards to travelling by air. Some of the airports, you feel as if you're a second-class citizen being left in or corralled in a pen when you're waiting for a wheelchair, because there aren't enough wheelchairs to take you. That was particularly the case, or my experience at other airports previously, before I was in my own electric wheelchair. So when I was waiting for wheelchair assistance, there always seemed to be a optimum number of people who were allowed to use a wheelchair on an aeroplane for safety reasons, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. And we used to have to wait, or I had to wait several times for a wheelchair to come along and assist me, and I think things have improved over the years. I remember travelling to exotic climes of Barbados one year, and I have secondary progressive MS. I'm a wheelchair user. At the time, I wasn't using a wheelchair, but I asked for an ambulift